Clarissa, 27 years old, had no idea that refusing to lend money would spark a chain of betrayal that would unravel her family from the inside. But when your ex-best friend decides to seduce your brother out of revenge, there is no going back. I have always been careful with money. I live with my parents in a modest two-story home in Asheville, North Carolina, and every month I contribute more than half of my paycheck to help out. Groceries, bills, my mother's medication, car maintenance, it is not easy, but we make it work. I do not vacation. I do not splurge. Every dollar counts, and anyone who knows me understands that. Except Brianna. Brianna had been my best friend for years. We met during freshman orientation at UNC Asheville, bonded over iced coffee, rainy weekends, and how much we hated our roommates. For a while, I thought she was the most loyal, supportive friend I had ever had. But slowly, she changed. She stopped asking how I was and started asking what I had. What I could give. What I could do for her. And then came that day. She showed up unannounced, reeking of desperation masked in fake charm, and asked me for $12,000. Not one, not two, 12. I remember standing there, blinking, thinking I had misheard her. I asked why she needed so much. She said it was complicated and that I should trust her. I said no. I told her that was a massive amount of money and I could not afford it, not with my responsibilities at home. I explained that I was barely scraping by myself, that I was helping my parents every way I could, and I was not in a position to hand over that kind of money to anyone, not even her. That is when she exploded. She called me selfish, accused me of always playing the victim, said I was just using my parents as an excuse to feel superior. She said I had always thought I was better than everyone else and that I would rot in that stupid house with my washed-up family forever. I stood there, speechless. I had never heard anyone speak to me like that. I realized, right then and there, that I had never really known her. She was not hurt, she was venomous. I told her to leave. I told her she was a snake, a viper, someone I would not wish on my worst enemy. I told her to never come near me again. She grabbed a water bottle from her bag and poured the entire thing on my head. I stood frozen, dripping, heart pounding, watching her storm off with a smile that said she would not forget this. And I thought that was the end. I genuinely believed the storm had passed and I had just escaped from a toxic friendship. But I was wrong. 2 months later, my brother Marcus told us he had a new girlfriend. I was genuinely happy for him. Marcus is a software engineer in Charlotte and had been single for a long time. He kept saying she was different. Smart. Kind. Funny. Gorgeous. He built her up like she was a dream come true and told us she would be joining us for dinner one Sunday evening. The moment she walked in the front door, my blood turned to ice. It was Brianna. She was standing in my house, holding a bottle of red wine, smiling sweetly, acting like we were strangers. My parents welcomed her in, and Marcus looked so proud to show her off. I said nothing. I could not. I just sat across from her, pretending like she was not the same person who had drenched me in water and called me every name under the sun. And she smiled at me with that same wicked smirk, like she knew she was winning. She was up to something. I could feel it. She was not in love. She was hunting. I started digging. A few weeks later, I was visiting Marcus in Charlotte. He had gone to the kitchen to make tea, and I saw his phone light up with a message from her. I should not have looked. But I did. And what I found made my stomach twist into knots. She was asking for things. Not just dinners or flowers. She was asking for an iPhone. Then a designer purse. Then a MacBook. Plane tickets. Hotel stays. A necklace. Every week, a new demand. And Marcus, he was giving her everything. She would tell him how special he was, how generous, how unlike other men. And he believed it. He believed every word from her lying mouth. I scrolled back far enough and saw the pattern. 2 weeks after I refused her the $12,000, she had messaged him out of nowhere. Flirty, charming, subtle. She reeled him in like a fisherman with bait soaked in sugar. And I realized the truth, this was her revenge. If she could not get money from me, she would get it from my family. And she would make sure I watched her do it. I was shaking. Rage pulsed through my chest like a second heartbeat. This was not just about money anymore. This was war. I closed the messages and walked out like nothing had happened. But I knew right then, I was going to end her. Quietly. Brutally. Without warning. I was not going to beg Marcus to see reason. I was going to make Brianna disappear from his life in a way no one would ever forget. She thought she had infiltrated my family. She had no idea what I was capable of. And I was just getting started. Update 1. It was not enough to know what she was doing. It was not enough to see the evidence. I needed her to feel what it was like to have everything crumble underneath her feet, fast, cold, and irreversible. Brianna thought she was clever, wrapping herself around my brother's life like a silk ribbon, smiling over dinner like she belonged there, manipulating him into draining his bank account for her fake affection. But she underestimated the wrong person. She thought I would watch in silence. She did not realize that I was already moving behind the scenes, and the first step of her downfall was going to begin exactly where she thought she was safest, her job. Brianna worked for a mid-sized marketing firm in Raleigh called Hawthorne Collective. She always bragged about it, about how modern their office was, about how much they trusted her with major accounts, about how her salary was a reward for being irreplaceable. She acted like the company depended on her, like they would collapse without her creativity. What she did not realize was that the more she talked, the more she revealed, and I had been quietly collecting those details for months. I remembered one particular afternoon, months before everything exploded, when she had ranted about her workload and how she had listed her company's name as a co-sponsor for a campaign she was running privately. At the time, I did not think much of it. But now that I knew who she really was, I revisited that moment with a new lens. And the more I investigated, the worse it looked. She had been using her employer's name, without permission, in partnership applications, Instagram giveaways, and shady influencer sponsorships that she had been organizing independently on the side. She even used their official email signature once in a pitch to a skincare brand, attaching a fake company memo to make it seem like her firm was backing her. It was corporate identity fraud. At best, it was a severe breach of policy. At worst, it was actionable, reportable, and completely fireable. And I was going to make sure every thread was pulled. I started gathering everything. Screenshots of her personal accounts where she thanked Hawthorne Collective for supporting her influencer campaigns. A LinkedIn post where she claimed she had secured funding for a project that had nothing to do with her job. PDF files she once shared with me back when we were friends, files that had her company's watermark attached to freelance contracts that were never authorized. She was bold. Too bold. She never thought anyone would turn on her. I found the email address of one of the department leads by digging through a digital newsletter from a conference Brianna had attended. I composed a message. I kept it professional, polite, and strictly factual. I did not include emotion. I did not accuse her with personal language. I simply attached the evidence, explained the timeline, and laid out how their company's brand was being used, without authorization, for personal profit. I told them that I had been hesitant to speak up but that the evidence was too serious to ignore, and that as someone familiar with their firm's reputation, I believed they deserved to know what was being associated with their name. Then I sent the email to every department head I could find. I used their public LinkedIn profiles to cross-reference job titles and email formats. I included dates, links, screenshots, and PDF copies. I gave them everything in one neatly organized file. I made it impossible to ignore. Then I waited. I did not have to wait long. That same evening, while scrolling through Brianna's socials, I noticed her tone had changed. She posted something vague about people being snakes and not everyone is happy for your success. A few hours later, her entire LinkedIn disappeared. By the next morning, she had removed every post that mentioned her job. By noon, her work email had bounced back as invalid. And by sunset, one of the executives I had contacted replied anonymously, thanking me for bringing the matter to their attention and confirming that Brianna's contract had been terminated, effective immediately. She was gone. In one day, I stripped her of her false sense of power. She had walked around that office like she owned it, like she was untouchable, while quietly selling her employer's credibility to fund her own image. But now the image cracked. She lost her position, her title, her status. Her world shifted overnight, and she never even saw the blow coming. Her smugness turned to silence. Her ambition turned to ashes. She had spent months plotting how to extract money from my family as revenge, but all it took was one day, one single day, for me to set fire to the foundation she had built her lies on. And this was only the beginning. Update 2. The silence after her firing was delicious. It was the kind of silence that said she was scrambling, backpedaling, trying to make sense of how everything collapsed in a single workday. And I was not going to let that silence go uninterrupted. She wanted to play games, and I had just taught her the opening move was mine. But now, it was time to make her realize the game was nowhere near over. It was only the end of her first illusion. I wanted to watch her crack, methodically, slowly, until there was nothing left of her reputation, her stability, or her arrogant smile. I waited exactly 48 hours after her termination before calling her. I made sure the news had time to settle into her bones. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice cracked when she said hello, as if she had not slept in days, and I smiled so hard it hurt my face. I asked her, sweetly, if she had enjoyed the gift I sent her. There was a pause, a deep, venomous pause where I could feel her brain trying to process the audacity of my tone. Then she exploded. She screamed into the phone, calling me every vile name she could conjure. She accused me of being jealous, petty, ungrateful, manipulative, and psychotic. Her voice rose with every insult, unraveling as the truth became unavoidable. I let her rant, let her spill her fury like hot oil down a kitchen drain, until she gasped for air. Then I calmly told her that she should probably save her energy, because this was far from over. And I hung up. I had already prepared my next step. See, Brianna had always lived above her means. She treated credit like magic, racked up bills with zero intent to budget, and assumed she could charm her way out of accountability. Designer handbags, apartment upgrades, expensive skin treatments, impulsive getaways, all of it paid through lines of credit and personal loans that she justified by saying her job gave her flexibility. But now, she had no job. No income. No backup. And I was going to make sure the people she owed knew that. I started with her primary loan provider. She once bragged that she had a line of credit through a boutique financial firm that catered to ambitious young professionals. I remembered the name and found their online portal. Using public business records, I found their regional contact email and crafted a professional-sounding message. I wrote that I was a concerned third party with verifiable information regarding the financial stability of one of their clients, Brianna Collins. I informed them that her contract with Hawthorne Collective had been terminated effective 2 days prior and that, based on her history, her ability to repay current and outstanding debts could be at risk. I attached a copy of the company's public personnel announcement which confirmed her departure. Then I sent it. But I did not stop there. I repeated the same process for the other creditors I suspected she had ties to. A retail credit line for luxury goods. A rent-to-own appliance store she once used for her new furniture. A secondary loan she hinted at during a brunch years ago when she claimed to have consolidated some of her student debt into a private lending program with lower interest. Every breadcrumb she had ever dropped, I had picked up. I dug. I tracked. I verified. And I delivered the news to each contact with the same clinical precision. That Brianna had lost her primary source of income. That she was likely at risk of default. That her lenders should take appropriate action. I knew the systems. I knew the red flags that trigger protocol. And I knew she had no idea how fast those dominoes could fall when you kicked the first one with just enough force. Within 24 hours, they started reacting. One of the lenders flagged her account for review and sent her an automated notice that her repayment schedule had been escalated. Another froze her access to deferred billing options. Her phone, I assumed, began to light up with alerts. Her email inbox likely filled with neutral-toned messages wrapped in legal terms that boiled down to one brutal truth: we no longer trust you. And the best part? She could not stop it. These were not fake rumors or fabricated lies. These were verifiable facts. The termination was real. The income loss was real. The risk she posed to those creditors was real. And because of it, her interest rates were re-evaluated, her repayment periods shortened, and her monthly dues were increased. Her financial walls began to tighten like a vice, slowly choking the illusion she had spent years crafting. I watched her social media that evening. The vague posts were gone. She stopped pretending. Her stories were dark. Her bio was stripped down to her name and a broken heart emoji. She had always lived online, showcasing luxury, pretending to be important. But now the silence on her feed screamed one thing: panic. Brianna was finally feeling what it was like to lose control. She was realizing, minute by minute, how fast life can fall apart when you build it on manipulation and deceit. Her job? Gone. Her income? Gone. Her stability? Shaken. Her future? Threatened. And the worst part for her was knowing exactly who had lit the match. She thought she could destroy my peace by latching onto my brother. She had no idea that I would destroy her entire foundation, one stone at a time. Update 3. There is a unique kind of satisfaction that comes not from screaming or fighting or throwing punches, but from watching someone unravel under the weight of their own lies, while knowing you were the one who pulled every last thread. Brianna thought she had infiltrated my life, my home, my family. She thought that seducing my brother and draining him for gifts would humiliate me, would punish me for not handing her $12,000 like she was entitled to my savings. She thought she could turn the tables, rewrite the story, come out on top. But I had already seen how this story would end, and now it was time to deliver the final chapter, personally. By the time I called her, I knew she was raw. Fired, exposed, drowning in debt, her Instagram empty, her phone filled with threats from creditors. She was no longer playing offense. She was hiding, licking her wounds, terrified that everything was crashing faster than she could pretend to stand tall. But I was not done. I had one more demand, and I was going to make sure she understood that this time, there were no more second chances, no more twisted manipulations, no more careful masks. She was going to face me, face what she had done, and leave my brother the way she came, publicly, brutally, with the whole world watching. I called her from the kitchen, pacing slowly as my parents talked in the living room about some neighborhood cookout. They had no idea what I was orchestrating behind the scenes, and I preferred it that way. I told her calmly that if she did not show up at our house that evening and end things with my brother in front of all of us, if she did not return every gift, every gadget, every bauble she conned out of him, then the next phase would begin. I did not elaborate. I did not need to. The silence on her end told me everything I needed to know. And so she came. She showed up just after sunset, wearing the same designer coat she had once bragged about getting at a discount with Marcus's card. Her hair was frizzy, her face pale, and her eyes rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that no makeup could fix. She looked like she had not slept in days. And as she walked up the driveway, clutching a bag filled with expensive returns, I felt no sympathy, only a steady, cold sense of closure. My brother was confused. My parents were even more confused. But I said nothing. I stood near the edge of the room, arms crossed, watching it unfold like a carefully rehearsed play. She handed Marcus the bag first, filled with the smartwatch, the gold bracelet, the perfume, the tablet, and the sunglasses she had guilted him into buying. Then, in a voice that trembled but didn't falter, she told him it was over. She said we were a cursed family, cursed from the inside out, cursed in ways that no one could see but that always poisoned everything around us. And then she turned and walked out. She did not wait for him to respond. She did not offer an explanation. She did not apologize. She just ran. Out the front door, across the yard, and down the street into a car that was already waiting. Her Uber, I assumed. She had planned her escape. But I had planned the destruction. Marcus stood frozen, still holding the bag, his mouth open in shock. My parents exchanged confused glances. They asked why she would say something like that, what she meant by cursed, what had gone wrong. I just shrugged. I said I did not know. I said some people are dramatic. I said maybe she had her own problems. And they believed me. Because as far as they knew, I had stayed quiet. As far as they could see, I had been nothing but distant, respectful, silent. The truth was mine to keep, and I had no intention of sharing it. What they never knew was that Brianna had no home to return to. Later that week, I heard through a mutual acquaintance, one of those leftover social media lurkers who knew bits and pieces of everyone's lives, that Brianna had disappeared. She left Raleigh altogether. Deleted her accounts, packed her things, vanished into some small apartment rental outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. She left no forwarding address, no goodbye texts, nothing. Just ghosted everyone. The reason? The banks had started closing in. Her credit accounts had ballooned into collections. One of her lenders had filed a claim. Another was threatening to garnish her wages, except there were no wages anymore. She was running. Not from me, but from the financial avalanche that I had simply nudged into motion. And now it was too late to crawl out. She was hiding under a new name in a new town, probably working some under-the-table retail job while constantly checking over her shoulder. Her confidence was gone. Her reputation? Shattered. Her relationship with Marcus? Dead. Her professional network? Burned. And her financial life was officially in ruins. The viper had slithered into my life twice. And both times, I cut off her path before she could strike again. But this time, she would not crawl back. She had been forced to shed her entire identity just to escape the fallout of her own lies. And I stood at the center of it, calm, unbothered, knowing I had done what had to be done. Quietly. Effectively. With surgical precision. They would never know what really happened. But I knew. And that was enough.